I purposely wanted to wait to shoot a video about health goals for the new year because, come January 1st and even a bit before that, it seems that there is this onslaught of like, it's the new year. How are you gonna be new? What are you gonna change about your life? And blah, blah, blah. And it feels, I don't know, to me, it feels overwhelming. And it feels icky, to be honest with you. But it does feel like really like there's this external pressure that we have to change. And, following up on the holiday season, maybe you didn't have the best habits over that. It often leads a lot of people to feel that they have to set these goals. And there's nothing wrong with setting health goals, but I find that a lot of the times we do this in a new year and they don't tend to stick. And there's reasons for that. So in this video, I want to talk about, why we don't tend to kind of complete our goals for the new year and what more effective goal setting might look like. So a good place to start with any kind of behavior change is to just take an inventory of what your past experience with that particular change has been. So a good question to start with is, have you set goals before in the new year? And then does it typically help you? Is setting goals something that you find to be a good avenue for you actually completing things? Or what is the pattern that you usually fall into with these goals? So I kind of drew up what I find to be a typical cycle of New Year's resolution goals. And I find a lot of people when it turns January 1st, like I said, you're not feeling great maybe about the health decisions you made, maybe in the past year or maybe over the holiday season. So you're like, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to do something different this year. I'm going to take control of my health or my finances or whatever it is. And we often set these crazy high ambitious goals, and there's nothing wrong with ambitious goals. I'm not against ambitious goals, but often what happens is you set an ambitious goal and then you're going to do really well with it in the beginning, right? You're feeling pretty motivated. It's in your headspace that this is important to you and you want to make a change. And again, maybe you're motivated by how you're feeling about your past decisions. So you often do really well at first, and you often really feel good about yourself for the first little while. And when I say first little while, sometimes it is just a few days. But what's very common, especially when people set health-related goals, is that as their life gets more busy, gets more complicated, health goals are some of the first things to drop off. So if you said, I'm going to exercise 3 times a week, moving forward for the entire next year, that can be really easy for the first few weeks. But then, when your kids' social schedule gets busier or your work gets a lot busier or your relationship gets complicated, things fall off. And exercise is often one of the first things to go. And so are some of the health-related goals that require more effort and planning and even mental effort as well. Right? So because things get complicated and because maybe that goal was more ambitious than could actually fit into your life, it's difficult to stick to that goal. And I'm not bringing this up as a point of feeling shame or guilt. This is just so common. This is more common than uncommon, right? Life gets busy, life gets complicated, and that goal that you set, especially if it's quite ambitious, it's just I can't stick to this. Maybe you fall off the wagon one week and then you're screw it. Why even bother going back to this goal, right? And a lot of people, and it doesn't even take that long after the new year or that new cycle for people to get back into familiar behaviors. And why you're going to go back to familiar behaviors is because that is what your brain is used to. And that is likely what your environment and the systems around you are used to as well. So when things are getting complicated, although you can have these great goals, it's just easier to fall back into old habits because that requires less mental strain for your brain to default back to, right? They are defaults. Right? And if you're going to go back to your old habits, right, then your health outcomes are going to go back to what they were before, and sometimes even deteriorate a little bit from there as well. And then what happens? Well, maybe those health habits continue for the year and they're not exactly in line with your ideal state, right? And then you might get to a point where you don't feel great about your health again. So you go back to setting this ambitious, unrealistic goal that you do well at in the beginning, but you can't stick to. So you go back to your old habits, and then you don't feel so great. And then you kind of keep setting these goals in a way that no real change actually happens. And again, no guilt, no shame about this. But what this video is really about is trying to break some of these patterns. So I want to reframe how we look at goals. And if you've watched my videos for a while, you know that I'm all about you. I'm all about you figuring out actually what's going to work for you. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is thinking that there's some sort of outside authority that knows what's best for us. And granted, I'm an evidence-based person and I love science and I love, finding out, what does the science say and what's going to be the most evidence-based way to achieve health. But at the end of the day, there is some discernment and there is some this is what is, let's say, ideal, but then what is ideal for me and what's actually going to be sustainable for me, right? So in the following slides, I'm going to ask you some questions. And I want you to think about these questions for yourself and maybe, take out a piece of paper and a pen and jot down some notes to reflect on what is going to help you frame your goals better and make sure that you can achieve them. Okay? So a first good question to always start with is why? So why do you want to exercise more? Why do you want to eat more fruits and vegetables? Why do you want to meditate every day? Why do you want to drink more water? Why is that important to you? And one of the answers I often get with that question is something in regards to appearance. And I understand that, and I think it's, there's nothing wrong with caring about your appearance. I care about my appearance, sure. But I would encourage you to set a goal that's not just about the way you look. Why? Because if you are trying to make changes that are maybe going to change the way you look, those changes are going to take time to show up physically, right? There is a long delay, unfortunately, between action and response, action and outcome when it comes to kind of changing physical related behaviors. So if you, let's say, are working out to look better or eating differently to look better, that might take months to make a change that maybe you feel is in line with your goals, right? So I also encourage you to have whys that are beyond appearance. So for instance, maybe your why of why you want to exercise more is so you have more energy throughout the day. You love how you feel when you exercise. I go through periods where I don't exercise or I exercise less and I just don't feel as good. And then I get a good workout in and I feel so damn good for the rest of the day. Sometimes even just if I haven't worked out in a while and I do a bit of a harder workout, the feeling I get afterwards it's indescribable. It feels so good. And I like to chase that feeling because it's something I get immediately. I don't have to wait months to get the payback from that. Same with things like meditation. There's an instant payoff as far as how you're going to feel throughout the day. Okay? When it comes to eating better, how does that make you show up differently? How does that make you feel better about yourself? How does that make you feel good about, how you can show up in your relationships? Right? And I'm just kind of throwing out many different things, but you really have to get clear about your why. For me, my why is that I care about this vehicle a lot, this body a lot. This body has gotten me this far, and I want it to get me a lot further. There is a very clear difference between a 50-year-old, a 70-year-old, an 80-year-old that has healthy habits and one that doesn't. There is a big difference in the types of bodies and the risk for disease in those two different types of situations. And I want to be the person that takes care of my body so my body can help me live more. Get very clear about your why, because your why is going to be important in those moments where you're feeling like reverting back to those old habits, right? You're going to need something strong to really cling to. So maybe like tack your why up on your mirror, right? Maybe you want to journal about that right now. Why is this change important to you? It's so important to be clear about that. And one of the things that we find that is very common in individuals that are able to stick to goals and to stick to behavior change is those individuals almost adopt a new identity. Your identity is made up, quite honestly. Right? Your identity is made up based on the stories you've told yourself, based on the experiences you've had, and you can redefine yourself. So for instance, in high school, I was a bit of a nerd. I wasn't that popular. I was the fat kid. I was whatever stories I told myself based on the experiences I had. I got to redefine that person when I went to university. And I actually saw what a change. I was like, actually, I get to decide who I am. And you get to actually decide who you are. So if you have never been the type of person that exercises regularly, can you be that person, right? Once you assume the identity of someone that is healthy, then you start doing the behaviors that fit with that identity. So one of the reasons that I have been able to consistently exercise for 25 years, even though I did not like exercise when I was a kid, did not play sports, got picked last, was a fat kid, one of the reasons that I've been consistently able to exercise and I've never gone like more than a week, and that's rare, without exercise, is because I am the type of person that exercises. I am the type of person that eats healthy. I am the type of person that prioritizes my health. So because I've assumed this identity, and this identity is important to me, right? I do the behaviors that match that identity. So the question is, what kind of person do you want to become? And what stories do you this takes another level, but what stories do you maybe need to challenge about who you think you are? That's a whole other topic. This is kind of a big one, right? But something that maybe you just want to start thinking about, because you get to decide who you are, right? Other people might have opinions about who you are, but that's all made up as well. You really get to choose who you are and how you show up. And people may or may not like that, right? But this is your life, baby. This is your life. And at the end of the day, you are accountable to yourself. And you get to choose the life you have. Okay? So what kind of person do you want to become in a way that promotes those healthy habits? Okay? And then ask yourself, what systems can you set up around you to support those behaviors? Do you need gym clothes? Do you need to find a particular, app that's going to help you work out? Do you need to change the types of foods you keep in your house? Do you need to clear out a space in your schedule, block off an hour in the morning where you are unavailable to anyone else, right? So you can spend that 1 hour in every morning to yourself. And I appreciate that. I have privilege that I can block off an hour a day to devote to my health, right? But somewhere in your life and your schedule, there is a way to set up systems so that it is easier for you. This could be a whole video unto itself, but again, I want you to start thinking about that. Do you have friends that you can, make exercise dates with? There are ways that you can make it easier on yourself. And by finding systems that support your positive behavior, it can start being a default. Okay? And then, things are going to come up, right? When life gets complicated, life gets busy, we often leave these goals. So what has happened in the past with your goals? Why have you stopped doing your goals in the past? Again, no judgment, no shame. But what is it? Why'd you stop? If you started eating healthy for a while, if you started meditating for a while, if you started blah, blah, blah for a while, why did you stop? Okay? Look at those, because those are gold, those reasons. Those are gold, because now they're areas where you can try to shift them, problem solve. How can you shift those things? Right? Well, for instance, like you might say, well, the thing that is a barrier to me exercising is that I feel really tired after work. Okay, cool. So now you've just learned that exercising after work is not for you. Is it something that you can do during your lunch? Is it something you can do, half an hour before going to work? So think about these barriers that often come up, and then, like I said, problem solve. How are you going to deal with them? Because setbacks are a part of behavior change. Like behavior change theories, they talk about this as well. They just expect people to have setbacks or relapses. I don't love the word relapse, but they expect people to revert back to their defaults because that's where the brain wants to go. So that's part of behavior change, which again is why it's so important to have a strong why. Because when you have a setback, you want to have a reason to come back. And if you have a strong why, you have a setback, instead of being like, fuck it, I just give up, then you're like, no, I want this. I friggin' want this, right? You come back to it. This defining that why is so important, right? And then because health outcomes, there's a delay between health behaviors and health outcomes, changing your health behaviors and having healthier outcomes, it can be very discouraging. For me, when I'm trying to, let's say, lose weight, which is an outcome, I don't even want to go down this rabbit hole, but it can take months. It can take months before I have like a noticeable difference. It takes a long time to see the results. So how do I fall in love with the process? How do I fall in love with physical activity? Even if my body doesn't change, I know that I'm improving my health. How do I fall in love with physical activity? How do I fall in love with healthy foods? How do I fall in love with drinking more water or meditating? Right? Because there's such a delay between behavior and outcome, you have to really enjoy the behavior and enjoy the life you're building of this kind of person that you are, so the behavior just comes more and more natural to you. As far as how long it takes to actually reset your defaults, right, to change your defaults from, let's say, the unhealthy ones to the more healthy ones, it really depends on the person. Maybe 2 months is what the research suggests, like an average of 2 months, right? But up to sometimes even as much as a year for some people, right? It takes a while to change those defaults. Like I have an exercise default, but that took a while to get to, okay? So it's important for you to enjoy the process and fall in love with the process and not just the outcome. Okay. And then I really recommend having like mental rewards, because the reward of like a health change takes so long. Can you reward yourself along the way? And I don't mean with food or like binge drinking. I mean rewarding yourself mentally. Like, for instance, I didn't want to go to the gym and I went to the gym. I leave the gym being like, yeah, fucking yeah, I did it. Right? I give myself a good for you, Deanna. I don't wait for an external source to give me that reward. I give it to myself. And that's one of the ways your brain learns, right? When you do something and it's like, right, there's like this reward to it. Your brain's like, oh, that's a good thing. And it keeps doing it. So can you give yourself like a moment of, like, give yourself a little bit of a dopamine hit, quite honestly, to help you learn that that behavior is something you enjoy doing, right? So if you feel good about the meal you just ate, be like, oh, that tasted really good, and I really enjoyed that. Good job, Deanna, right? Or whatever your name is. Okay? Reward yourself through the process. And bottom line is, we tend to repeat patterns and go back to our default modes until we start to define new ones. And defining those new ones takes time, it takes effort, right? And I've kind of outlined some of the things that can help you with that process, but always just be compassionate and kind to yourself as you try to make changes, because changing behavior is hard. But if you can figure out who you want to become, and know that it is possible for you to be whoever you want to be, right, in here, right? You get to decide your own identity. I know the world puts an identity on you, sure, right? But I've redefined my identity several times. And like the world has followed. Other people have followed or they've not followed, right? But I'm proud of the person I have become and the identity that I've assumed. And this identity helps me do the things that make me feel good about myself. Okay? So, as always, this is all about you feeling amazing. This is all about you living the life that you're here to live. We're not here to spend our lives just obsessed about our bodies and feeling bad about ourselves. We're here to live, and this body helps us live, right? So taking care of it can help you enjoy your life more and help you leave a mark on this world in the way that only you can. And we're all dying to see it. So, as always, I'm Deanna Bedoya. If you like this video, leave a comment or like or subscribe. Tell other people about it. And if you do need more guidance with this stuff, in the near future, I will be opening up some one-on-one spots. So stay tuned for that. And if you're looking for some more coaching along the way, I'd be glad to be of service to you. Anyways, have a great day. Take care.